Hi, I'm Dax Gordine, creator of Forest Folk, the comic, and you're listening to True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's May 14th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards the betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with Dax Gordine about Forest Folk at TCAF 2021. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and it's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Based in Ontario, Dax is a professional artist with jobs ranging from illustrating webcomics and graphic novels to classical film animation, including Osmosis Jones, 8 Crazy Nights, and Looney Tunes Back in Action, along with computer animation for video games, including Namco High. He's also the creator of the ongoing weekly webcomic Forest Folk, that follows the tales of Filbert the Fox and Thomas the Sketching Elf, and has been described as the Sunday funnies crashing headlong into Looney Tunes. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Dax Gordine about Forest Folk at TCAF 2021. So, Dax Gordine, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
Well, I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
Oh, man, that's taking me back. Well, actually, my dad was a comic distributor, wholesaler, so I grew up around comics. Mm-hmm. He was a company called Multibook, and he basically supplied all of Southern Ontario. So one of the stores you went to as a kid, he probably supplied there. So it was actually a pretty cool thing. I grew up reading books all over the place in the warehouse, but let me see. He used to bring them to me like every Friday in a little box. I think the one getting into comics, I think it would have to be X-Men, and I believe it was during the Silvestri days, and I'm pretty sure it was. It was around the time when Gateway was around. Do you remember? Do you know the X-Men characters well?
I'm afraid I'm not that in depth in knowledge.
Anyway, yeah, I can't even remember the issue number, but it was an Uncanny X-Men, and it was around the time when they were going to Australia, and there was the guy Gateway who would make, I think, the Reavers and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I remember reading that and just being like totally blown away by it, and that's when I started, that and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle graphic novels were huge for me as well. Yep. So
lots of good stuff there. How about your influences today? Who influences your work today? Who you're reading?
Today, I actually kind of break the mold as far as what artists I feel do. Because I don't tend to read a lot. I don't do as much as I should with reading and kind of keeping up on other people's work. But I would definitely say Scotty Young, his style kind of coincides with mine pretty well. And we started talking a couple of years ago, so I really kind of got into his books. And when he launched I Hate Fairyland and stuff like that, I read that whole series, which was fantastic. Yep. I haven't bought many series, but I definitely bought that series. What else have I gotten into? I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I'm terrible for that question.
No, that's quite all right.
Nobody's going to get some top picks from me for reading. That I'm sure they're much better than I am picking content. So.
Well, I understand completely. That's for sure. We're so busy doing stuff. Like, you should see the pile of comics I got here. Nice. I got to get to them. So, yeah, one of these days. We're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. Mm-hmm. And what I want to know, if you have any favorite convention or festival moments that you'd like to share.
Well, last year at Toronto Comic Con, with the last one, I think that, I was not in comics for such a long period of time that I hadn't been to a convention. I think it was probably 8 years that I'd been to one, and it was actually last year's with Raid was the first one I've
Okay.
sat in forever, and it was right before the pandemic. I think it was the last one before the pandemic started.
Right. Yep.
So I believe that's the one in September or whatever, the Toronto Comic Con or something, the big one. I did
Fan
that
Expo,
one.
I think.
Fan Expo, that's the one. Yeah, Fan
that's
Expo.
it.
So I did that one with them, and it was a great time. And like
Cool.
it was the first time I'd been back at a con in forever, and it was just nice being with a big group of my friends and artists, and they're so good there. Like they're all so good and talented, and their books are great. And we had some, of course, classic nights. They had a party there too, so it was just a lot of fun.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, lots of good interaction there.
Yeah.
Cool.
I miss it.
Good.
I miss it.
Well, we'll get back to it soon, that's for sure.
Hope so, yeah.
Yeah. So we're here talking about your latest project that you have exhibiting at TCAF called Forest Folk. I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about it, maybe the origin of it as well.
Absolutely. I'm super pumped because honestly, I've been working on Forest Folk. It's a webcomic that I started 5 years ago or 2016. I basically just kind of was trying to get out of my own head and do something, my own IP. Like I was working like all of us do in the industry and not having time for my own thing. And I had, like all of us had all these ideas. Oh, I'm going to do a graphic novel of this, and I'm going to do this and this and this. And of course, I never got around to it. And just one day I said, you know what? I just recently, I did Inktober a lot, which was kind of like the genesis of the character Filbert, who's the fox in Forest Folk. And Thomas is the elf, and they're the two main characters. And Thomas and Filbert were both characters I've been drawing for Thomas for a couple of years. Filbert was brand new that Inktober, and I kind of literally that year I got a Calvin and Hobbes, the Ultimate Edition, like the collection, and so kind of revisited that, and it was just the two worlds colliding. And I said, you know what, I think I could probably do. With these two characters, I could do one page a week, kind of like a Saturday morning newspaper comic, a throwback to those times. And so that's basically where it started. I just one day, I think it was my birthday. It was literally the end of the December. I put my first one up on Facebook. I made a page, put it up on Facebook, and been putting one up a week every Saturday since, for the most part. So that's where it started. And for years, at this point, I had 200 strips, and I'm like, well, I kind of would love to finally make my own book. You know what I mean? I've never published my own IP, never done anything like that, but it was just really daunting for me to kind of do my own kind of Kickstarter thing and whatnot. So it was just kind of a perfect marriage when I got bumped into Raid a couple of years ago, and Ramon was saying that he liked my product. He liked Forest Folk for one. So I was excited with that. Like, here's this guy saying, "Oh, I love your comic. It's great." And I'm like, oh, sweet. And then we basically had at the meeting and talked about he wanted to kind of push Raid as a publishing house, right? Like starting getting into publishing and getting a library of books under the Raid umbrella. And I was like, oh, absolutely, let's do this. So obviously pandemic kicked in and we didn't manage to get it going right away, but no time like the present. And we're really going all, full steam ahead on this. And I'm really excited about it.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah.
Good stuff. I want to switch gears slightly and talk about the tools that you use. Are you a traditional or a digital artist?
I'm definitely, I've swung digital and have been for years. It's just a lot easier for me. I can still draw, traditionally, obviously, like I'll still do pen and ink drawings during Inktober and stuff, and that's kind of fun. But I do all my work. This whole book has been done digitally. So,
have the tools changed over the years? You said you started this in 2016.
No, I'm actually, it's funny. Sadly, I'm still using the same 16 or 12 inch Cintiq I had back when I started it. So I desperately need an upgrade. But this thing has been a trusty tool of mine. And yeah, no, I've been using a Cintiq ever since I drew on my buddy's Cintiq. I kind of went, well, now I can go digital, because before then I couldn't handle I'm not good enough to use the tablets, the Wacom tablets and stuff. The disconnect between the eyes and the hand were just not working for me. So once I sat on my friend's, Cintiq tablet, and I was like, wow, you can actually draw and see what you're doing. I pretty much was sold at that point. So I've been drawing digitally ever since on a Cintiq. So yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Any thoughts about moving over to the iPad at all?
I wanted to a year or so. I think when they first came out, the iPad Pro, I was like, oh, that'd be cool to use that as more of a travel friendly option, right? But I found I wasn't really, the reason for me to do that had disappeared and I basically work from home all the time anyway. So I was like, I don't really need to drop the $2,000 on it. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
but I mean, if I was to start to have to travel a bit more while I'm working, it's definitely a good option for
Okay.
that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Wondering if you have any advice for someone who might be wanting to make their own comic book. What would you say to them?
Man, just do what I did. Just start going. I think our biggest. I have a friend, Joe Vereen's. He goes by the name Joe Vereen on Instagram and all the art stuff, but he's a buddy of mine from college, and he had a great saying, and it's called analysis paralysis. So basically, I find all of us as artists, to some degree, kind of get in our own heads about creating your baby, or actually putting your idea on paper and saying this is it. I feel like we never feel like it's good enough, or it's not where we want it, and you just have to get to a point where it's like, you know what? And actually, Jake Parker says this other quote, which is done, not perfect. Mm-hmm. And it's very true. It's so easy to think, no, this has to be perfect before it goes out, because otherwise, but nobody cares. Everyone just wants to see content. And, if they can read it and have a laugh, or read it and see some action, and as long as you're selling your story, like, just people will believe it. They'll read it, and either they like it or they don't. But the point is, do it for you, put it out there, and don't be afraid to put it out there. Like, I literally did it the most ghetto way possible. I made a page on Facebook, you know what I mean? And just started putting it up on there. And then I bought a domain name. And then, so I did it in all kind of backwards order. But I think it's more important just kind of pulling the trigger and doing it. If you want to do it, just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, good advice, for sure. So we talked about Forest Folk. I'm wondering what's next for you. I know it's still continuing, right? Was there any other projects you're working on too?
Well, this one's got me fully, taking up all my extra time, Forest Folk, because it's an every week thing. But work-wise, I'm working with Marvel on a super secret project right now, which is really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, so it's the first time in my career that I've been able to work for Marvel, so I'm excited about that, and so I'm definitely being kept pretty busy.
I bet. Mm-hmm. And I hear there's a rumor that you have a display of your own going on at Raid pretty soon.
And yeah, it's basically going to be a nice little kind of gallery. I think there's about 12. We picked 12 of the comics and blew them up to, like 11 by 17, and they're getting framed. And I even believe there's going to be a print possibly there. If you come by and you get you can have a coffee at the cafe in the gallery, and you can take a print from the cover of the book that we're launching on Kickstarter. So it's just kind of nice little promotional TCAF kind of thing, along with obviously the other artists at Raid. There'll be stuff there as well. I believe some fan art should be up too and stuff. So everyone's pitching in and trying to make this Kickstarter successful. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, that's great. Now, I know that typically at conventions like the Toronto Comic Arts Festival is about interacting with people, but it's also about buying books. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Raid, but where do you recommend people go to buy your books?
Well, my book hasn't, this is my first book, and the Kickstarter launches in the middle of May. So this will be my first book. This is the first time, if we complete the Kickstarter, which I'm hoping, let's knock on some wood here. People jump on board and they want it. It's looking good so far. There's been some good feedback, but once that's done and we get it printed, it's going to be available, I'm assuming, through Raid, through their website for sure. I'll be selling them at cons, and I'm sure I'll have it up on my website at some point too. So that's where you're gonna be able to find my stuff. But other than that, I don't have any books. This will be my first book that has my name on it.
Oh, that's pretty exciting stuff. So where do you recommend that people go to find you online and find out more about your current and future work?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, my actual personal website hit a bit of a snafu. So normally it's daxgordine.com, but I had some problems with that and had to sideline it for a hot minute. But right now you can find me on Facebook. Is very prevalent. It's facebook.com/daxgordine. .illustrator, but Dax Gordine, you'll find me on there and you'll see it there. Instagram is huge for me. D__GEE is my Instagram, and Twitter as well is the same thing. D__GEE. And I post all my stuff to all three socials, so stuff's always going up there, so you can see it all there.
Great.
Good stuff. Well, Dax, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
I would honestly just like to say, everybody go pick up the Kickstarter, support the Kickstarter, get this book out there, and basically it's like it's 120 pages, I believe it's going to be. It's the first 105 strips in the series, starting at number 1 from 5 years ago, and moving up to 105. There's a bunch of cool stories in there. It's basically like Ramon calls it Looney Tunes meets Calvin and Hobbes. So it's like a Saturday morning full page, one-off strips. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 that run in together, but it's just kind of like that nice kind of light, funny, wacky, jokey kind of comics that we all grew up with in newspapers. You know what I mean? It's that kind of feel. So that's what I've been doing, and I hope people enjoy it and go check out the Kickstarter. I don't know if we can put a link to that, but you can sign up right now and get notified when it goes live. It'll be going live Friday noon, so hopefully we'll see you all there.
Thanks to Dax for the chat. You can discover more about Dax on Twitter and Instagram at D__G. That's G-E-E. You can follow the webcomic Forest Folk on forestfolkcomic.com. And the Kickstarter for Forest Folk from Raid Press can be found at kickstarter.com/projects/the-raid-studio/forestfolk. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.